All right, guys. So it's good to get Leah on board. It's a privilege to interview her. She wants to share her thoughts about professional development. And if you don't know who I am, I've grown my own brand, my own name to 24,000 followers from absolutely zero. And one thing about me is I like interviewing smart people who are realists, who want to share their stories, who want to share their thoughts. And Leah is one of these people where I am so privileged to have on board to basically share. And if you don't know who I am, I'm sure my audience knows who I am. I'm a team human person. I like getting people on board who want to share their thoughts. Leah is one of those people where I'm very, very passionate to interview. And today we're going to be talking about professional development and how Leah sees that as a way where we can look at it as a perspective from business. So welcome to the interview, Leah.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Nice to meet you.
Okay, great. So we've been talking briefly about professional development and how important it is in a business context. But before we go into this, tell us a little bit about yourself, you know, who you are, why are we going to talk about professional development? Because I feel it's a very delicate subject to talk about. We don't get that many people talking about it. You could say a lot of people are like closed books, so they don't really share their thoughts about it. So it's great to get you on board, Leah. And I want to know why first we want to know about you, so fire it away.
Cool. Well, thank you for having me. Great to meet you at last. I love your energy, your passion. I know we had some chat.
I'm right into it. Yeah.
We agreed to do it. I love your directness. I'm like that, as you know. So I'm a subject matter expert in user experience design. My speciality, you could say, is research. Always interested in why people do things,
Right.
why the behavior. You know, I used to drive everyone bonkers when I was little, like most children do, asking the questions. So it's quite ironic that I do what I do now. Also grew up in a household full of people who were interested in psychology. My parents are psychotherapists. I've always been incredibly interested in, I guess, well, we're talking about personal development, but emotional development. And that sort of thing. And like you, I kind of came out of nowhere as well, because I didn't do an academic degree in human factors, and I found it really hard, you know, to get into UX, as lots of you out there will know it is quite tricky. But I'm here and I've been around now for a long time, you know, over 10 years at least. And I'm very passionate about sharing sometimes controversial opinions or disruptive, I guess, schools of thoughts that I have.
I want you to be as disruptive and as real as possible in this interview, because I think it's going to entice a lot of people in my audience, especially, who are following me, who love what I say and how real I'm about it. Okay, so my first question, Leah, is about professional development, okay? And, you know, we did briefly talk about this. You know, how do you see human beings becoming better people in terms of professionally developing themselves? You know, you did write a blog about this, but we will go into that further into the interview. So my first question to you is, what is professional development and how can people use that in the context of business life and pleasure?
Okay, it's a really interesting
question. Very interesting topic, yeah.
I think that actually it's really hard for human beings, as you put it, to personally develop on their own. And I guess, I mean, first of all, you have to accept that there are areas in your life, and we're talking about work here, that actually require development. And that, you know, not everybody's willing to do that, or not everybody is aware that that is a conversation that one has to have with oneself. You know, where am I strongest and where am I weakest? Where do I want to be? So we could talk about all aspects of life, but because we're talking about work, I think what's really important is that people have the opportunity to be mentored by other individuals, managers, peers, colleagues, etc., who are genuinely interested in helping them develop. Because it's hard for one to look just introspectively into oneself and sort of say, well, this is where I am, and actually this is where I kind of need to be. They kind of need somebody outside who works with them to be able to say, you know, this project went well. I mean, we see it in business already with retrospectives, you know, or postmortems, as I like to call them sometimes, you know, where you pick apart what could have been done differently.
Right.
But what does happen, I'm finding at work, or that I have found really, is that people don't really want to communicate honestly and directly with one another. And that could be for a nice reason. It could be that, you know, I don't want to offend somebody, or maybe I don't want to, you know, I don't want to hurt someone's feelings by letting them know where I really think that they need to develop. So that needs to change, but we can get into that. But ultimately what I'm saying is in order for somebody to develop, you have to want to, and you have to be, I guess, unsatisfied with where you are at the moment, you know, at work, and you need to be able to identify where you need or want to be, rather, where you want to be, where's the desire, and then you really need to be able to have a good manager or a good set of peers that you can rely upon.
Do you think that's lacking in the workplace? Do you think there's a little bit of, say, how could I say, deceivement going on in the workplace, and how people
workplace deceitful? So I think everybody's got an agenda at work, and it's ironic, isn't it? Because we spend more time at work than we do with our family and our friends and our loved ones.
True.
Sometimes we don't treat, you know, each other in the way that we could, considering we spend so much time with people. I think at work, everybody has an agenda. So within business, there are politics. I mean, don't get me started on politics, but there are politics in the workplace everywhere. And it's really hard for people with a voice who are driven to actually get ahead, because for all kinds of reasons, there'll be people that will be sort of putting the washers on it, not wanting them to progress. I think that within business, we've come far. You know, we have, you know, key metrics that we give our employees or our peers in order to assess where they are and where they need to go. And often we reward people, you know, financially. But I think the point is that not everybody, you know, so money doesn't mean everything to everybody. So sometimes people want something other than just money. So if you're asking somebody to set, you know, if you're setting some objectives for somebody and you're going to come back to them in a month or 3 months or post project and identify how well they did, often the reward will be monetary. And sometimes what people want really is acknowledgement or appreciation, or to know that they're going in the right direction. So I think we've still got some way to go.
Okay, that's a good old concept in the way we look at it. It looks like you're looking at it from a realist perspective. I can tell by you answering that question, it's very realist. How would you define professional development then for someone that, you know, is lacking those skills and maybe might be a bit overpowered by other general managers or co-workers, because there is a lot of overpowering in the workplace, and I think you're the perfect person to ask. So how would you define that in that sense?
I think sometimes using your voice and having a voice doesn't make you very popular. So it comes down to who you are as a person. You know, if you
cannot use your voice, say, if you can't, and people say you cannot say things,
it sucks, right? It's hard, it's difficult. You need people, someone like me who doesn't really care and is opinionated and is looking out for people who perhaps aren't as extroverted or don't know how to use their voice, to be able to help them or show them or at least do their bidding for them. And that's why having multidisciplinary teams with people from all backgrounds and of all strengths and weaknesses is really important. You don't want the same of everybody, right? Can you imagine 10 of me? So you just want like a team of different people, so that somebody eventually in that team will have your back if you don't have a voice. And I think that's the key for a good manager, is to be able, sorry to interrupt you, but to be able to adapt. So to be able to manage somebody differently than to the way that you would manage somebody else, because everyone's got different triggers, everybody's got different sort of motivational triggers and reasons for wanting to be at work. And some people are better at speaking out than others.
So I want to go on to the next question. Overpowering is a very powerful word to use in a workplace, and you know, you did touch upon about people who need to have a voice at work. Do you think people who are, say, at the bottom of the ladder and are trying to climb their way up the ladder in terms of professional development, because this interview is about professional development, do you think people have the right to make a status at work, or the way we treat each other with co-managers? Do you think that, you know, human beings have the right to say something when they shouldn't be saying something, but they want to get it out. Do you think that should happen?
I'm a fan of freedom of speech. So I think everybody's got the right to say anything they want at any time, even if I don't agree with it. But I think it's the way in which that message is delivered that's most important. So when we look at user experience, you know, some of the things that make up a good user experience, we talk about content, because content's so important.
Yeah.
What we say, how we say it, what we write, you know.
How we put it, yeah.
Absolutely, how it's framed will have an impact on the reader, the receiver of the email or of the dialogue or whatever.
So you're a fan of freedom of speech at work?
I'm not, I wouldn't. So am I a fan of freedom of speech? I support freedom of speech. Do I think it's dangerous in the workplace? Absolutely, because we are volatile, and if somebody is going to say something that could hurt somebody else, of course that's not nice to think about, is it? Well, it's not nice.
No.
But I don't think that. I think we should be able to say what we like. However, I definitely think that there needs to be a shift in how we deal with the aftermath of that. So do you have somebody in your team that has been particularly negative, that is bullying, targeting someone? I mean, these are things that have happened to me, and I've confronted the person, and it's turned out that person's, you know, reaching, let's say, a milestone birthday and is having a little bit of a meltdown. It's also going through a bit of a crisis, you know, in their marriage. And I've confronted them about it, and I expected them to you know, not
confronted them.
Yeah, and they knew what they were doing, and they said they knew what they were doing.
That's a very good point you made there. And how would you tell that to my audience, so people who are watching this video, that they're going through those similar situations, or maybe they're a bit strapped or strained at work? How would you kind of explain that in terms of a professional way, sort of thing?
What? How would you confront somebody?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess in a lot of businesses, that's why you've got human resources. I think that some human resources departments are better than others, depending on the setup of the organization. I would say it's great to have like a buddy at work, so somebody that you know you can be really honest with. And it takes a while to get to know somebody so that you really understand, you know, whether they're genuine, whether they are going to be there for you or not. And then there are people like me who, if they see something wrong or something that's going on, who just won't stand for it and stand up.
That's a very good point there. So in terms of this context now of professional development, I've actually read your blog about how human beings to transform inside and out. Can you tell us a little bit about this, and why we are linking it to this interview of professional development? What is it you want to tell people about it?
Well, I mean, I think my blog about transforming from the inside out really is about more about kind of business, in terms of how not enough businesses have a vision, or they have a vision which is to become more user-centered and to sort of design better products and services. But often, you know, this vision isn't properly thought out, or there's not been enough strategy, or isn't aligned, like the rest of the business isn't aligned with the business, with the vision. So what happens is they sort of go in and they spend a lot of money on building a ginormous user-centered design team with very talented designers and researchers, without really thinking actually about how these people can develop within the workplace. So, you know, not thinking about how they're able to use their voice or have their voice. There are often blockers in very sort of, I was going to say old, but established organizations, say kind of 15 years old, where, you know, they've got ingrained or entrenched ways of working, and it's at odds with the vision to become user-centered. So you can't hire in, you know, the most fabulous kind of trendy designers, you know, researchers, thinkers, let's say, design thinkers, into a business that still wants to rule like it's in the 1950s. It doesn't work. And this is what happens when a business does that. You either, so say you've invested a lot of money into a contractor, and we're talking about hundreds of pounds a day. Say you've got a contractor and you're not allowing that contractor to actually do their job properly, a designer, not allowing them to actually, you know, improve your product or service, design properly for your business. Right. They're either going to sit there and sort of take your very healthy day rate that you're paying them and look for another job. And if you're an established brand, what will happen is they'll probably use, you know, a portfolio from the very work they've been doing there in order to get a job where they can get their voice heard.
Right.
They'll just up and leave, and you won't be able to get somebody of their caliber again, because UX is a very small industry. It's a small animal, and it's a moving beast. You know, everybody knows everybody. And if you're a business that isn't going to allow a UX person to have a voice and professionally develop where you are, then you're going to find it very difficult to retain or hire good UX people. So my whole point about this blog is that if you do want to transform, you have to really transform from the inside out. It's not enough to simply just improve your products and services and then expect that to be enough. You have to make sure the people who are responsible for improving your products and services are having their needs met. They feel motivated. They are waking up and going to work and wanting to design for your brand and are aligned to what your brand is trying to actually create or is trying to become. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes very good sense. And I think you've explained it perfectly in the way that I want this interview to be as real as possible, because I want it to change people's lives. You know, getting you on board and actually hearing your thoughts and your realist thoughts is exactly what we need. We need this breath of fresh air. We need this sort of context to come out, and obviously to people to see what is exactly happening, you know, in terms of professional development, because not many of us actually talk about it, and we can hide behind the curtain. So now my next question to you is, Leah, is how do you see it in terms of people sort of nurturing themselves? You know, I always look at companies, right? And something that really bugs me is that titles mean everything. And, you know, in terms of, you've got to have a title for this, you've got to have a title for that. If you don't have a title for Google, you can't work for Sony, say. And say, for instance, you know, a lot of people who are coming through the woodworks is, you know, they don't have those titles. I'm one of them. And, you know, I'm very smart in the way I've kind of grown my own audience. I'm a very smart individual, but I never had the chance. And what I want to say is, it's quite a touching subject, is that, you know, titles, it shows that people need to have a title for this and that. How do you see it in terms of someone that wants to now grow and nurture themselves in a professional way, about how to, you know, work for those companies and those businesses?
Well, why would you want to work for a business that only cares about titles? That's what I would say. I mean, honestly, what you've just said, why would you ever want to work for a business that only cares about titles? I worked for a business who, you know, had a
sometimes it's reputation. It can be reputation.
That's right, that there is reputation, but you're going to become very frustrated. So if you are someone like myself, or like someone like you, as it sounds, you know, you're just going to go into yourself and become frustrated. I wrote a blog on my website about what I learned from crying in the toilets at work. You know, I used to cry in the toilets at work once upon a time, because having a voice, having an opinion, it just doesn't make it popular. And when someone who is senior to you only because they have a title that is senior and knows nothing about UX, and this person was in a job because they couldn't afford to make him redundant, and that came from the chief executive officer. They were moving him around the business because they could not afford to make him redundant, which does him a disservice. It's not fair on him. Did me a disservice, because I used to report to him and he had no idea what he was doing. Lovely guy, but really, really difficult to work with or work for. You know, you get to a point, I think, and maybe it comes with age. Maybe you just get to a point where you get tired and you say to yourself, do you know what? I don't want to work for an organization that is only going to give me that's only going to give me an opportunity based on what it says on my CV. I think that actually, you know, you are as good as your last project, and you could be anything. You know, you could have done anything. If you've delivered and you've done good work, I don't really care what they called you. It's true that it's probably quite difficult to work for you know, really well-known organizations that have a very flat structure. You know, we're talking about the big fours, right? But there are lots of startups that mean that you have to get your hands dirty, and you've got the CEO doing all kinds of things, right? Because they're still growing, and it's only when they either float or become much more established, or, you know, are very, very well funded, that, you know, unfortunately, some of this unnecessary hierarchy, I'm not plugging it, also on my blog, You know, but it's interesting because I write about this stuff. You've obviously researched me. You know,
I have, yeah. I read your blog and I think it was amazing the way you wrote it.
Thank you. You know, unnecessary hierarchy is just rubbish. It really is. It's just rubbish, and it can really kill the kind of bright.
I think what kills a person more in terms of, you know, professionally developing themselves is titles, and that they really need to get from A to B to C, and then, you know, become a director and then become a CEO. You know, and people are always chasing the dream, it seems, especially youngsters of today, I think, are very lost. How would you define professional development for a younger person who wants to, you know, grow? Because we are in a materialized society, and I feel some people are losing the buck here in terms of how they're sort of growing and how they're sort of developing themselves. Do you think we're losing ourselves in some way, or do you think the company is now becoming even more pickier in terms of who they want to hire and how they want to do it?
I think there's an unfortunate emphasis on academics, you know, and I've got so many stories, but really,
yeah, we've only got time constraint for time, but yeah.
I know. I'm just thinking, but there's still a very unfortunate, you know, emphasis on academics. Do I think we're losing ourselves? I mean, I've got children, and I'm thinking very personally about how I would help them, and really, you know, as a businesswoman, but also as a mother, I would define professional development really as kind of how happy you are. That, you know, there's no point in going into work and earning lots of money if you're miserable, right? And sometimes, like I said, and I've touched on before, feeling like you're doing a good job, feeling like you're solving problems. For me, I'm a problem solver. I would much rather take a lesser paid piece of work if I really feel like I'm actually making a difference and adding value, and you know, I'm going to have some really firm kind of connections at the end of it and work with people again, versus something that would bore me basically. So in terms of how I would sort of advise people to professionally develop, really, I'm just going to take myself back to my first answer, which is you need to look inwards and ask yourself, you know, what you want, and try as many things as possible. For me, it's about opportunities. And if you're talking about youngsters, I think it's really important to equip them with as many opportunities as possible. You think you're interested in research, try that. You might be interested in interaction design, or maybe you're interested in project management. You know, you like to organize everything in this context of your life. Imagine doing it at work. What would it be like? And that's why businesses that actually, you know, enroll graduates on graduate schemes and move them around the different parts of the business, I find are very, very valuable. And I think we need a bit more of that, so they can get a taste of all elements of business.
My next question is a very philosophical one. I think it's something that I want to kind of take off my chest, but also tell my 24,000 people who are actually probably going to be watching this video is, do you think, you know, hiring managers today are becoming very, very picky in terms of how people can develop themselves? You know, you've got some very smart people. I would say I'm one of them, that, you know, going into a company, probably into a business, you know, and not being the chosen one. Do you think hiring managers are looking at titles such as your degree, maybe your work experience, or do you think they don't care about that and they just want to hire someone? I think people are missing how other people can develop themselves. How would you see it?
So I can only speak from UX and design thinking, excuse me, because that's my thing. And I would say that there is a massive problem at the moment with hiring managers who aren't able to identify what a good user experience person looks like. There are hundreds of courses that churn out, you know, UX people, by the way, who've spent thousands of pounds, probably the same for what you would get for a master's, for say several weeks experience, which has been engineered for the course, and actually they haven't been exposed to commercial experience. And so on their titles they may have UX designer, UX researcher, whatever it is, UX consultant. And the danger, it's not even a danger, it's damage that's happening now to businesses, is that hiring managers really don't know how to identify somebody with genuine user experience experience or talent versus somebody without because of the titles. But your question was about pickiness, and I would say that if there is this misunderstanding about what a good UX person is, or
generally a person, yeah,
a person, exactly, a person in general, yeah, then you could very easily be somebody who would be miss an opportunity
completely, yeah,
a bunch of boxes. And you know what? You don't know what those boxes are that you're supposed to tick, and why would you? I don't even think the business really knows what boxes they're supposed to tick in the first place. So it's just a hot mess, really, isn't it?
Oh, you really...
What are we gonna do?
You are amazing. You are absolutely amazing, and I'm so privileged to.
Oh, thank you. I like you.
The reason being is because you kind of ticked my own boxes there, and I'm sure you've ticked many other people's boxes as well. That, you know, I think, you know, we learn about professional development at school. I wrote an essay on it, and the purpose of this interview was to talk about professional development. I'm hoping it helps as many people out when they do see this video interview. And also, I'd like you to touch upon your business after we've actually clarified this, is that the professional development in terms of pickiness, it's happening more now, I feel, than say 20, 30 years ago, when those days were quite traditional. You didn't have the technology, you didn't have the IBM, you sent a CV through a letterbox or a typewriter, and there wouldn't be some sort of general hierarchy. It would be very much, okay, can you do the job? Yes, start on Monday. Now we're saying, okay, you got to go through this round of interviews, that round of interviews, you know. So this is the kind of way I feel that something is changing. Do you agree? Hello? Leigh? Hello? I think we've lost you a second there. Hello? Oop, I think, have we lost you? Right, so I just got cut off there. I don't know what happened. Technology, as we say, technology. And Leah was actually telling us about the finalization of how companies were picky and how employers are picky, and she was going on about it, and I want to know exactly what you were trying to say there. So if you can tell us exactly what you mean, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I wouldn't necessarily use the term picky. I would just use the term ignorant in the nicest possible way. So there isn't enough, or confused. There really isn't really enough information given to hiring managers about who to look for, you know, when it comes to user experience specialists, and why you would maybe select somebody over somebody else. They have very generic job specs. I mean, a lot of them use third-party recruiters for this reason, because actually, I have to say, even third-party recruiters sometimes know a little bit more than, you know, their clients in terms of what they want or who they want. And you know, that's a dangerous thing, really, because, you know, there's lots of courses, as I said, that are essentially, you know, churning out hundreds of people who are giving them false promises about trying to find a job in UX because it's because it's lucrative, which is a whole nother subject. Actually, someone just wants to work in UX because it's lucrative. We haven't got time for that rant. But you know, what I'm trying to say is it's a dangerous thing that's going on, and I think that more education needs to go to hiring managers about, you know, who they need, why they need them, and then to help them identify and find the right person. And then when the person gets there, to ensure that they don't get disappointed, because the business can actually give that person what they want, which is to actually initiate change, to improve products and services, and to make things better, which is what all good UX people really want, is to actually make a difference. And if you're not going to allow a UX person to do that, then you're wasting your time and your money. But in terms of pickiness, you know, as far as kind of HR people go, or hiring managers go, I think there's a big lack of education there that needs to change. And I think lots of people don't really know how to interview people anyway. So, you know, that's a whole other subject.
So I just want to tell my audience about where we left off. We did get cut off there for 2 seconds, and we were talking about professional development at the workplace and in terms of the way things are going. And, you know, we were just briefly discussing to you guys, my audience, about, you know, how hiring managers can be pickiness, and Leah was actually explaining to us exactly the process about it. Now, I want to wrap this up, and I want to know exactly about your business and about how you can tell us why we decided to talk about professional development and how this is sort of like linked to where you are standing in terms of how this is going.
Sure. Because I'm a grafter and I've fought and fought and fought for my own professional development, because nobody helped me in the slightest when I wanted to get into this industry. You know, I had all of the, you know, that you needed to be a good researcher. I was inquisitive. I was a good listener. I am a good listener. I am inquisitive. I'm still all of those things. And I had to find lots of different ways of trying to get my voice heard. You know, as I said, crying in the toilets didn't get my voice heard. It just made me very, very upset. And I realized the business wasn't for me. And so professional development is something that is actually, you still there?
Yes, I am, yes.
Excellent, you're frozen, but that's okay, great. So yeah, professional development is something that's very, very close to my heart, because I've worked very hard to build my own, and also I care greatly about helping other people with their own professional development. I always say, if I've got, you know, two people in front of me with the same level of experience, or even someone was slightly under, I would always give the role to somebody who is most passionate, is most driven, really wants to be here, really wants to make that change. I set up something called uxlincorner.org. It's not very active anymore, but I set it up, you know, a few years ago in order to try and encourage people from all walks and all backgrounds to actually get involved in human factors if this is something that they really wanted to do. And I have hundreds of emails every day because of that sort of group that I set up, from people telling me that they've been rejected. I mean, these are people who have PhDs and people who don't have PhDs. But the point is, you know, to the business, what is it that you actually want somebody to do in order to give them an opportunity? So that's why I think we're talking about it, because I'm somebody in my own business who not only goes and helps businesses improve their products and services, but I see myself as a spokesperson for the user experience community to help that community get their voice heard. And also, again, it's a bit of a cheeky plug, and it's not live yet, but I'm actually, I've got a minimal viable product going live in a few weeks, something called uxvoices.com, which is about all of this, about helping UX industry and the UX community actually get their voice heard, so that businesses truly understand the value proposition of what UX can bring.
And where can we find you on your website and exactly on LinkedIn, and how?
So I'm everywhere. I'm on LinkedIn. I drive people nuts because I post so much content. So I'm on LinkedIn. I think my go ahead, sorry. I'm
sure people will see you, because I will tag your details as well and exactly where to follow you on LinkedIn. So it's a privilege to interview you.
My privilege, thank you.
And I like the fact that this has become a very realist interview, and I think people need to hear the real stuff. It would be great to talk to you about rejection probably some other time, because I think that's a very, very hot topic to talk about. And maybe we can follow this up with another interview about rejection, because I think this is something that's aligned with professional development. I just want to ask you one final question, Leah, and that is, how do you see, how can you help someone who wants to basically develop themselves and are really shy and are really sort of let down in life, and they really want to just shine and be someone?
I mean, you want me to answer that in a minute?
Just in a quick nutshell, you know, how do you sort of see that?
Help someone? I think they need to find cornerstones. They need to find people who they admire or look up to or want to become. And I'm not talking about people who are, I'm not talking about celebrities or people who, you know, are kind of very far away. It could even be somebody in their family, you know, it could be somebody in their family that's perhaps slightly different to them. It could be a friend who they've, you know, gone along the similar path, and this person's gone this way, and maybe that person admires that person and wants to be like them. I mean, what I would stress is that it's important to be yourself, but when I say be like that person, I mean do what that person is doing professionally. I think if you are an introverted person and you are quieter than someone like me or other people, you've got amazing qualities and attributes that really, you know, a project team or a workplace or somebody in a relationship or whoever could really, really appreciate. People who are introverted have qualities that I wish I had. But I think if what you want to do is get ahead and you can't find that voice, you need to find somebody who has a voice to have your back and talk to them about it. And also, you know, just outside of work, often, you know, you find that might happen kind of in their personal life. You won't find that's a problem just at work. It will be elsewhere. So it's a real conversation they need to have.
All right, so that's a wrap. I really thoroughly enjoyed this interview with you, Leah, and it's very much a privilege to get you on board to hear your insights. I was actually waiting to do an interview like this with my audience, and I cannot wait to now publish this. Where can we find your website and your details? Do you have a special blog that you have? Can you just share that with my audience?
Yeah, no, I will do. So my website is leahryz.com. So www.leahryz, it's a strange one, .com. But maybe what I can do, Nazareth, is send you the links to my social media and my website, and maybe you could pop.
I would add that on there.
Yeah, that would be great. I'm always open to connect. Thank you so much. It's been great. I've had a lot of fun.
It was a good, fun interview. I hope my audience enjoy this, and I hope you've learned a lot. It's a privileged interview, Leah. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
All right.